The Pentagon Roswell cover-up was already exposed at a 1997 press conference, but it only now gets viral. This will be the final word on the Roswell incident. Whether you accept that the explanation is up to you, but we do, said Colonel John Haynes at the press conference. In July 1997, the U.S. Air Force held a press conference to stop rumors that they recovered a flying saucer and extraterrestrial bodies during the incident, but it did not go well. Instead of satisfactory answers, Colonel John Haynes brought more confusion and curiosity to the case. The Air Force took 50 years to just say, "I don't know what they saw in 1947. The Roswell UFO incident brief. On July 8, 1947, Colonel Jesse Marcel stated in a press release that the U.S. Air Force has recovered a flying disc with alien bodies had crashed in New Mexico. Unfortunately, the new press release was issued later, which certainly was to change the fact of the first one, and now the crash UFO turned into a crashed weather balloon. The updated weather balloon theory did not add any significant details that would explain why or how a highly decorated war officer, Colonel Marcel, who participated in delivering the first nuclear weapons used in war, mistook a weather balloon for a crashed disk with alien bodies. As we can understand, they're totally different looking. Dozens of U.S. military officers claimed that the crash involved extraterrestrial craft with aliens, while skeptics tried hard to deny it. Besides, the U.S. government covered the whole incident, calling it a military program, and they called it Project Mogul. Last Roswell press conference, in 1997 press conference, 24-minute video you'll see in the article here, was to justify that it was the invasion of the crash test dummies, mannequins designed to test high-altitude parachutes. The Air Force Colonel John Haynes based his statements on a detailed 231-page report named The Roswell Report, which includes photographs, film footage, original records, and witness statements of the event at Roswell on the night of July 4th, of all dates, 1947. Yes, July 4th. It will be the final word on the Roswell incident. Whether you accept that as the explanation is up to you, but we do, Colonel John Haynes said at the press conference. Haynes explained that the alien bodies were mannequins, sent aloft with sensitive auditory equipment to detect nuclear detonations in Russia. Dummies were sent aloft for scientific research, he says, but on careful listening to Haynes' words, he does not say alien bodies were mannequins. He says bodies observed in New Mexico desert were probably test dummies as the explanation for the aliens. Now it raises a question as to how a highly decorated war officer, Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel, mistook the mannequins for aliens. The report of alien autopsies was discussed in the press conference. Hayes explains multi-Air Force accidents resulted in the loss of human lives. Does it mean from this report that not only cannot Air Force officers recognize dummies, but medical staff have never seen human cadavers before? That's unbelievable. Did this 1997 report help close the Roswell case, or just raise up more suspicion? The first question posed to Haynes by a journalist was, why did it take so long to come to this conclusion after multiple other conclusions? And with a pause, Haynes stated, the first report, and in the essence, it took a while for our historians to find any photo evidence of what I am now telling you. Isn't it ridiculous that the scientists did not take any photo evidence to document how the test dummies held up under stress in the crash? That's unbelievable. The second question, essentially calling Haynes out. You're talking about 1950s test dummies that happened nearly a decade after the Roswell incidents. Again, Haynes says, well, that's the problem with the time compression. I don't know what they saw in 1947, but I'm quite sure it was probably Project Mogul, he said. The third question was, why don't conspiracy theorists believe you? Before the 2017 New York Times report that UFOs were only in conspiracies, only some people knew the real truth, but it is true that the U.S. government has been covering up the UFO truth for decades. Still, there is no proper explanation for Roswell crashes. Anyway, Haynes replied to the question by saying that he does not have a clue why people believe what they believe. Isn't that kind of the job of the military in general, to speculate what and why people believe things so that you can predict reactions and formulate proactive responses to de-escalate potential volatile situations? As per Haynes, there were lots of dummies dropped, around 2,500 balloons in New Mexico alone. Then why is there no photographic evidence of that? Haynes, to the conspiracy theorists, but they must look at the evidence, and then holds up the New Roswell Testament. Here's this book. According to him, the book had everything that people wanted to know about Roswell. He clearly meant to disregard all of the hard work done on the Project Blue Book, Project Sign, Project Grudge, and the Robertson's panel. But then 30 years later, New York Times exposed the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which single-handedly dismissed Colonel Haynes' statement given in 1997 Roswell press conference. The following question: does the U.S. Air Force regret not declassifying crash test dummies and weather balloons? And Haynes says, great question. Nothing in this book was ever classified. Then why did it take the U.S. Air Force 50 years to come down to this conclusion? And he further said, in the first reports, everything was classified in the 1970s. By this time, Haynes had created confusion among the reporters. It was never classified, or it was classified in the 1970s, which means he did not answer the question. According to Haynes, test dummies were not used until 1953. So how could the 1947 Roswell event be test dummies? The test dummies were not used until 1953. But if you overlay the material from his book and extrapolate backward in time, you may have a better explanation that what was initially reported as its aliens followed its not aliens, which means why was there a need for the press conference again? Haynes was very proud of his report, and according to him, it answers lots of questions, but he could not even answer the question being put to him, and several times said, well, the answer escapes me, but it's in the book. The last question to Haynes was essential. How do you know you're not being used for misinformation and you don't know everything? And Haynes replied, it's my job to know everything. Then how does the Navy seem to know more than the Air Force about UFOs? Why is the Air Force still silent on the subject? On March 13, 1997, thousands of witnesses in Phoenix, including the governor of Arizona, John Fife Symington III, witnessed a UFO. The event lasted from 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. MST, made no noise, and it was the size of a football field, so it was huge. Based on witness testimony suggesting it occluded large swaths of stars from the sky, the military said it happened due to the flares they dropped. The most interesting thing about the Phoenix Lights was it took place in March. It did not make national headlines, the cover of the USA Today, until June. Interestingly, the final statement on Roswell just happened to fall in June. The 1997 Roswell press conference ended with the word probably. However, there was no probably in the first news release about Roswell. There was no probably in the Nimitz Tic Tac incident report. The UAP, UFO, and new terms of UFO, UAP, went from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than 1 second without a single sonic boom. Interestingly, David Fravor and his wingman did not say probably, it was definitely not human, they said. Highly trained and reputable military and law enforcement officers, government officials, journalists, and scientists have been telling it's aliens. There are more credible people saying it's aliens. For example, Chaim Eshed and Chris Mellon. The Phoenix Lights should have been issued in the year of disclosure in 1997, but instead the U.S. Air Force doubled down on it was a weather balloon. This is from Myth and Mystery on Collective Spark. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.